How do I get it? How do I get it to look good? How do I get the glare? There. Yay. Okay. Hopefully that's not too blue enough to where you get the point that I'm trying to do like blue lighting. Okay. I'm in a new room, if it wasn't obvious, and I have been absolutely struggling to get the lighting to work in this place. It's a big mess, but you know, we just gotta move forward. Can't even see Sonic, man. Sonic is hidden behind me. Hello everybody, and welcome to the Calm video. Yeah, I'm actually re-recording this. It's literally around 11 months later since I previously recorded this segment of the video. I recorded back in November, and it is now October of the next year. Listen, I don't know how things like this happen. The lighting still looks like ass. There, is that good now? Do I look good now? I got a new camera that month, and it was the first ever thing I recorded on that new camera, which is the camera I'm currently using. And I had no idea how to use it, and so all of the footage looks horrible. So I would love to just be able to edit that video, because certain moments look really good, but other moments, they look really bad. And I can't promise that this video is gonna look good. Apologies all around is all I can say. But we're here to talk about Calm, and that's what matters the most. Also, you may notice Halloween decorations, just ignore them. I am too lazy to take them down. I can't be bothered. I'm just gonna keep telling myself that I have a good excuse for why it took me an extra year to work this video out when it was only supposed to take me 1 year instead of 2. And my excuse is that I tried to watch 120 movies in 1 year simultaneously, and it broke my brain. So hopefully that will be accepted as a decent enough excuse. Anyways, on to talking about Calm. The Meet You There tour, which was promoting Youngblood, went from August 2nd, 2018 to November 19th, 2018. So partially into late 2018. But as soon as we get early 2019, we get plenty new content already. With only a few months in between, which I'm assuming was taken to make the album, as well as all the other stuff they end up doing, and maybe, you know, have Christmas off, if they so pleased. In March, we get a new song from Five Sauce, and this time, it's a collaboration. The second ever collaboration they ever did. I can't remember if I mentioned the first ever collab song they did with One OK Rock, Take What You Want. That's a really good song. I'd highly recommend checking it out. It came out like a little bit after Sounds Good Feels Good, so it was kind of in that like almost 3-year gap where they weren't really doing anything and they were quiet. That song came out. So that was their first collab ever. And again, technically, it's a One OK Rock song featuring 5 Seconds of Summer. It isn't until Five Sauce 5 that we get their actual 5 Seconds of Summer song featuring another artist. So we'll get there when we get there, eventually. We get their second ever collab song, which is Who Do You Love by the Chainsmokers. Famously, the Chainsmokers were my least favorite artist throughout all of the 2010s. They're a lot less hateable now that they're ignorable, but at the time, boy, did I not like them. Yeah, I really don't like the Chainsmokers, and the specific album that was for this song, that this song is on, I mean, World War Joy, is probably one of the worst albums of the 2010s. Like, it really snuck in there last minute. At least I think it came out in the 2010s. It might have come out in 2020. I didn't write it down because I don't care. But it's a bad album. There's some really, really bad songs on there. Honestly, I'm not gonna fault Five Sauce at all for this, even though I think it's a deplorable act. We don't judge here, okay? We just recognize. I'm gonna hold off on my judgment for just a smidge and discuss the logistical reasoning for doing this collaboration. They clearly wanted to capitalize off of the success of Youngblood because, I mean, yeah, sure, it had been a few months since we had previously gotten new music, but they had been, you know, promoting Youngblood for basically the entire year of 2018. And early 2019, we're not even in the second quarter, and they're already releasing new music. And sure, a collab with another artist that's going to be on another artist's album, you know, is a different story, but within a month or two, we get a new single, a lead single. So they were basically in a rush to get new music out and really capitalize off of their success, which makes sense. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of the song Who Do You Love? It really isn't for me. Again, I despise the Chainsmokers' whole thing that they try and do with their music. Michael sounds really good on it. He gets like half a bar and he sounds really good. But, I mean, when does he not? Am I right? I mean, it was successful enough. The critics hated it. I hated it, but it was a decent success. It was pretty much the only successful song from that album, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, that album flopped, and this is when the Chainsmokers exit the pop music discussion. For good riddance, I say. They do a good job of doing the blandest sort of algorithm pop you could find, to where it was gonna play just fine on pop radio and on Spotify playlists. There are some saucisms in there. They do still perform this song live, usually like half of it, like a chunk of it in a medley. At least that's what I remember from when I saw them live at the Five Sauce show. I wasn't gonna spoil that until later, but I literally have the poster on my wall, so there's not much to spoil there. And you know what? I knew every word. Listen, there are certain times you gotta clock in as a stan, and that means singing along to a Chainsmokers song. I'm mad at Five Sauce for making me do that, but sometimes you just gotta clock in and do your job, you know? Listen, I make jokes like that now, but back in the day, I would have been really embarrassed because I considered myself a real music reviewer and real music nerd, and so to admit that I have a somewhat of a bias towards Five Sauce would have been embarrassing for me. I'm still willing to be honest, I guess is my thing. If I don't like something, I am going to tell y'all, as you know. I kind of grilled their first album, which it probably didn't deserve, because it's just a simple little boy, you know? But I really went into it because that's my truth. So being a stan only goes so far. When it comes to the actual music, I'm going to review it as such, and I'm not just going to, you know, say it's good just because I stand them or whatever. I think that that's a disservice, actually, than a service to the artist. So anyways, I know I said this earlier in my previous sections on Five Sauce, but I felt as though I had to repeat it this late into the game, considering it's been so long. I've gone through like 5 different hairstyles. In the next section, I'm going to have red hair, which I didn't have. Again, I had a year ago. I had red hair in fucking December 2024, and it's October 2025. I haven't had red hair for almost a year now. I'm gonna have red hair in that video. I'll mention the tour they go on in 2019 once we get there, but they do eventually go on tour with the Chainsmokers, which might have been a big mistake, but we'll get there, okay? So 2 months later, on May 23rd, 2019, we get the music video for the lead single for this album, Easier. Here's the thing about Easier, okay? I like it. I like it, but it's not my favorite Five Sauce single. When I'm thinking of lead single, I'm not thinking of Easier right away, if that makes sense. I think my main problem with it is that it doesn't sound super Five Sauce, or at least the official studio version that we have. It doesn't really sound as much like a Five Sauce song as I would like it to, and that's because it's actually one of the rare moments where it's not a song written by Five Sauce, it's written by Charlie Puth. Amnesia is the other one, and I can't think of any more. But there might be 1 or 2 more out there. But Amnesia was written by Good Charlotte, or the Madden Brothers specifically, and Easier was written by Charlie Puth. And boy, you can tell. It's basically an edgy, emo Charlie Puth song. It's fine. It grooves pretty well enough. I like the sort of industrial angle they're taking with this new sound. It's a natural evolution of Youngblood. Youngblood did have a lot of groove in it, and it was, you know, a little bit more melancholy, but there were still a lot more brighter, more synth kind of 80s new wave inspired sounds, versus with Easier. When you compare Easier to Youngblood, you can see that they're going for a lot more like almost 90s industrial, and I know that sounds crazy to people who actually like that genre, because this is like very pop. But maybe that comparison would make just a smidge more sense when we talk about the remixes. So this song had 2 remixes, I think. It might have had like a club remix or something that I can't remember right now. But it for sure had 2 main remixes. The first remix is what Five Sauce had started calling Live from the Vault. So it's Easier Live from the Vault. This is the first remix, and it's the best version of the song. Oh fuck, I didn't get my tinfoil. Let me go get my tinfoil. God damn it, I always forget it every time. We're here to talk about this. Real quick though, before I do that. So I love Easier Live from the Vault, and pretty much everyone else seems to as well. I think the only people, this could just be biased, but I think the only people who listen to the original version of Easier are people that don't know that the Live from the Vault track version exists, because they're just, you know, everyday people putting on like a 2010s pop playlist or whatever, right? If you've heard the Live from the Vault version, it's more likely that you are going to prefer that version. And I mean, in my opinion, firstly, it's because it sounds like Five Sauce. It has all of the Five Sauce isms that the original version does not. They took what Charlie Puth and the other writers who worked on the song had made and made it their own song. And it doesn't feel quite the same with the original version. Although, you know, they have their little quirks in there a little bit. So the Live from the Vault version of Easier is rock. It's a rock song. The original version of Easier is a pop song, and it has a very, very stripped back, basic bones kind of approach. This was very trendy at the time in 2019. It was like, how little music can we have and still call it a song, right? I think of songs like Gold by Kiara, a lot of what DJ Mustard was doing at the time, where it's like hi-hat, synth, artist on top, and that's it, you know, and that's kind of what Five Sauce do. They have a little bit more instrumentation, but overall it is very rudimentary and simplistic. And listen, there can be a beauty in that, okay? And again, I don't hate the original version of Easier. I'm just saying, if we're comparing the two, Live from the Vault wins every time, in my opinion. Oh, that's horrible. My conspiracy comes into play. I probably didn't need the foil on that whole time, but now is where I really get into the meat and potatoes of the conspiracy. My personal conspiracy is that the Live from the Vault version was the original version of the song. This is the same thing I suggested, alluded to in my Youngblood video, where I was like, the remixes that we got were the official versions, that the original versions of the song that they wrote, and then they reworked the songs and tinkered them to bring them back to like a modern pop radio sound. And making these remixes at the time, and this was the beginning, this was the, what's it called? Early stages of remix culture because of streaming, where you release like 10 million remixes of the same song. Five Sauce were one of the first artists to do this, as far as I'm aware, in the popular realm, and it became very, very common once specifically the year 2020 hits. But I think the point of the extra remixes was to give the fans, the people who actually cared, like you and me watching this video, I would assume, the real version of the song, the actual version that they wanted. And my evidence for this is that they very rarely, if ever, play the original instrumentation for Easier. I think for the Five Sauce Show tour, they did play a more traditional version of the original version of the song when they played it during the medley, one of the many medleys that they did. But at the end of the day, whenever they would play this song live, they would play the arrangement that was used in the Live from the Vault track. So I just think that was the original version. And that's the version that should have made it on the album. It should have been the single. But I think they were just so desperately trying to hold on to the public attention and the popular sphere, and they knew that radio was a big deal for them. So they had to create something perfect for radio. So they called up Puth and they told him, give us a hit. And he did, because this song was really successful. It was a pretty successful song. I think another radio topping hit. So it succeeded for them. And at the end of the day, does it really matter? With streaming these days, it's like, just put on the version you like. And since it's a remix, it contributes to the total streams of the song Easier. So there's my conspiracy, and it's gonna go for all of the other Live from the Vault tracks, okay? Which we're gonna get more of later. So speaking of Charlie Puth, on August 9th, we get some pap walks. Now, very rarely do I mention Five Sauce pap walks, because I think it veers into that realm of things I don't want to discuss that I've mentioned already, like, personal lives and relationships and stuff. But when it's important, I've mentioned it. And I think we get an obvious pap walk here, paparazzi walk, that was they probably phoned in. They probably called it in and booked it, because it was a mode of promotion. One would call this an Easter egg. I wouldn't. It is blatantly just like promo. You know, it is so obvious. But you know, you could consider it some 5-sauce egg behavior. Would you guys be interested in me doing like a explaining all the 5-sauce Easter eggs throughout the years? Because I would find that a fun thing to do. I have ideas for other 5-sauce videos that aren't just like, you know, going through their history with the albums that I might explore after I finally finish ranking all of their albums. Or not ranking, reviewing. Although I will rank them. Oh, that would be fun. So yes, we get some really fun pap walk photos with t-shirts saying things such as, like, Easier sounds a lot like a Charlie Puth song, and that's because it was, and, like, Charlie Puth or Luke or something like that. Like, we got 3 different shirts worn by Ashton, Callum, and Luke. But yes, this was clearly basically announcing what would happen 3 days later, on August 12th. 3 days later, we get the Charlie Puth remix. This was a thing that Charlie Puth was doing at the time where they would release a remix, but it was actually just Charlie Puth covering the song, essentially. He did this with that one song, I Hope, or Hope, by Gabby Barrett. Was that her name? She's like a country, it seems like one-hit wonder right now, and that was her one big song. And Charlie Puth did a remix, which is what was the main successful song, I think, the main version that was successful of that song, and it's a cover. It's a cover. Let's call it what it is, okay? I call it like I see it. He's doing covers and they're pretending it's a remix. It's like the artist 5-sauce are like his backing band, essentially. I don't like this version. That's because I'm not the hugest fan of Charlie Puth. He made one good album and one best song of all time, possibly #1 song of 2018, featuring Kalani. I kicked the tripod because that's how much I love the song Done For Me by Charlie Puth featuring Kalani. He made one best song of 2018 and never again. I hated all the albums before and I've hated all the albums after. I don't know what happened for Voice Notes, but he made one banger album. And this was the beginning of his losing streak once again. For me personally. I know a lot of people like Charlie Puth, and I think that that's perfectly fine, and I don't judge you. I can't remember if this remix was more popular than the original Easier. I can't remember. How the charts work is that, you know, you have the song and then you have all the remixes, and the remixes contribute to the song. And then once one of the remixes overtakes like streams or sales or whatever, like numbers from the original, then that's the version that like is officially charted. And Billboard likes to fuck around with this. It's a messy thing. Like they kind of you know, drop the ball sometimes with this. So I can't remember if the Charlie Puth version was what actually charted at the end of the day or not. I can't remember. But yes, needless to say, Easier was a very popular song. Just 11 days later, we get the next single, which is Teeth, or as I've apparently written in my notes, Teeth. Teeth instead of T-H-F, Teeth. Which the music video for released on August 21st, 2019. I'm sorry, Spotify is screwy these days. I don't trust any of the dates that it says on there. It says that their self-titled album came out in January. That is the least January album I've ever heard in my whole life. What do you mean it came out in January of 2014? I'm assuming that's because when they added it to Spotify, they didn't like add the specific date. They just said it came out in 2014. So like it just auto-corrected to like the first month. I don't know. So I'm going off of the YouTube music video uploads. So the song, and I don't remember exactly when it came out. As y'all know, I wasn't a stan at the time. I had temporarily turned in my badge, one could say. So I don't remember if the song actually came out on that day, August 21st, or if that's just when the video came out. Whatever, it doesn't matter. Who cares? Who cares? Now, Teeth is actually one of their most popular song. I think it's like technically on Spotify, on streaming, like #2. And I think She Looks So Perfect or Amnesia, I can't remember, is #1. So like that's a pretty big deal. I forget that this song is really, really popular. I was gonna say because it's also a fan favorite, but see, you can't say stuff like that with the 5-sauce fan. That's the thing with the 5-sauce fan that you gotta love, is that it's a very diverse fandom. All the songs that I hate, somebody I deeply respect says that they're favorite songs. So it's great. That's why people got so pissed when they ranked their discography, but a discussion for another day. I think the reason why technically Teeth is their most popular song, at least on streaming, is because it was actually featured on the 13 Reasons Why soundtrack. I can't remember if it was for the final season. I'm pretty sure this is when the final season came out. I've never seen that show. I watched the first season and I thought it was horrible, so I never watched any more of it. I also think this was on the Riverdale soundtrack, if I remember correctly. I'm not gonna say that this song is full-on Riverdale core, which is a term that, wait, I have the cup, I have it. Spectrum Pulse, Mark Gordon, that's the mug I chose for today. That's a term I'm pretty sure he coined to describe a lot of like the indie sort of like pop crossover music that is supposed to be edgy and soundtrack a really cringy scene in Riverdale. Riverdale core. It's honestly a great way to describe a good chunk of pop music from the late 2010s. The original version, I don't vibe with it as much. It's very bass heavy. That's one thing I will say I've been heavily appreciating with these two songs, with Easier and with Teeth, is that it is basically like purely bass. It's like bass in a drum machine. And I know Ashton's playing it actually on a drum pad, but it's not actual drums as far as I'm aware. There's no actual drum kit on either of these songs. This is definitely one of their best songs. As in the Live from the Vault track version is one of their best songs. That came out a few months later, actually, on October 20th. This is another example of them giving off spooky vibes, them being real spooky. They did much of the same with Valentine. Very funny that Valentine, which is supposed to be like, you know, their Valentine's Day song, theoretically, is like their creepy, spooky song. Like, I'm adding that to my Halloween playlist this year, for sure. The live version. Because the live version, they were on something. they were cocked and ready to go, if you know what I mean. Did I ever explain my shirt, by the way? I don't have a shirt from this era. This is the only era I don't have a shirt from, and I sleuthed online to see if I could find one. I knew that Hot Topic was selling some of them at the time, and I found one, but someone was selling it for like $30, and I'm like, I don't know if a shitty ass... It was not that high quality. It looked pretty low quality, because again, it was from Hot Topic. Listen, I like Hot Topic. I shop there a lot, but sometimes the shirt quality is ass, and it was one of those ass quality shirts, and they were selling it for way more than, probably at least like $15 more than it probably went for back when you bought it originally. So I didn't give in. So I'm wearing this shirt with all of them having their sunglasses on. Maybe if I can find the actual image, I'll put it on screen. You can only see Cashton. Only Cashton has been in view this whole time, but I promise the other two are there. Look, they're there. There's Luke and Michael. I need to talk about this one specific moment in Teeth Live from the Vault because it drives me crazy. It makes me want to box Ashton Irwin personally. In the second verse, when, you know, it's kind of stripped back again, he does these little tippity taps, these little on the like the edge of the drum, and it's so good. Oh my gosh, I literally have a freak out every time I hear it because it's so damn good. This song it rips live too. They really go all in for this song live. It is juicy. There's some really juicy guitars on there. Again, the bass is phenomenal. I'm so glad to see the evolution that the bass has taken from like the traditional pop punk of like, why do you even have a bass player here? You can't even hear him, to like it being a forefront of a lot of these songs. And you know what? It makes sense. In this modern pop landscape where trap music is heavily, heavily influential on the whole pop scene, using a bass in the same way that you use a bass in a rap song, like, it works great. It's perfect. That is a great example of how they were actually able to successfully blend the idea of like a rock band or like a band with live instruments, that sentiment, with modern, at the time, sounding pop music. So to rewind a little bit, to go back to September, specifically September 25th, 2019, 5 Seconds of Summer went on tour with the Chainsmokers. Here's the thing. I think at the time, a lot of places were marketing it as like a dual tour, like, you know, like a combo tour. But in actuality, it was the Chainsmokers tour featuring Five Sauce. They probably had like equal-ish in length set lists, but it was called the World War Joy Tour, which is the name of the Chainsmokers album. So in actuality, it almost was like Five Sauce were opening for the Chainsmokers, which I guess technically, like, when it comes to the normies, they were more likely to probably remember the Chainsmokers and Closer than they were 5 Seconds of Summer and She Looks So Perfect. This tour was probably very successful for them. Apparently the set list was very unique because they kind of tried to match more of like a DJ kind of set vibe and transition between a lot of songs and only, you know, play smaller chunks of songs. So you got more songs that they played, but smaller like chunks of them, like like a DJ set almost.
Our manager walks up to us and says, "Hey, there's an opportunity, to go on tour with the Chainsmokers." And we were like, "Okay, interesting." And I think we'd done the song,
or it was about to come out. We thought about it, and it's a unique opportunity to have like a DJ group ask a pop rock band to go on tour. So I think for us, we were like, first thing was like, well, if we want to do it, do we have time? All like the logistical stuff and like how we'll look and like, but then we were trying to figure out how do we make it work for us, and how do we like, this could actually be a great opportunity. And I think that's what I love about this band, is that we take something like that's maybe like an obscure idea and try and, I don't know, make it work for us. And like, the set we did was like almost a DJ-esque jumble up of all our songs,
Yeah. I think as well, like EDM is the biggest genre of music on earth, and rock is the least popular. So we're out here trying to make rock pop, and the genre is failing. There's nobody else out there apart from Imagine Dragons and Maroon 5 in top 20. And it's like, what do you do? So I guess we looked at the polar opposite thinking, and it's like, well, where are all the people at that would never even think of listening to us? And they're at these Chainsmokers shows.
At the Chainsmokers show.
it's gotta be, right?
So the theory was, it's like, just get right in front of them then, and show them the musical diversity and impact that a rock band can have, and how entertaining it is, and how awesome it is. And hopefully these people will come round to liking our band, and we'll see them at the next tour.
Yeah, that's classic Five Sauce. It's like we could have done an easy thing and not done that.
But that became like our best like curated show.
Yeah,
definitely.
That was our best show.
That pushed us to the limit, because it's like you're a rock band competing with EDM.
So here's the thing. Apparently, all of Calm had already been written for the entire year of 2019. They wrote it like early on in 2019. And the record label told them to sit on it. Something I probably should have explained earlier at the very beginning, but I didn't, was that they actually signed to a new record label. Instead of being signed to Capitol Records, they had now been signed to Interscope Records. And they leave Interscope Records, if I remember correctly, after this album cycle is done, for reasons which should be obvious, but we'll talk about anyways. So they wanted to release the album sooner, within the year of 2019. But then, what they said in the 10-year anniversary podcast, the little episode they did, which was recorded 4 years ago, holy shit. So they might describe certain things differently now, because a lot has changed in 4 years. But back in 2021, they kind of danced around the topic, it seems like, and very kind of, lightly said pretty much, without much emphasis, that basically they were told to wait to release the album till after the World War Joy tour.
We had the album done at this point for like almost 8 months. We had signed off the record and we were ready to go.
Yeah.
So all the while that we're doing this tour and that we're doing kind of other stuff this year, the only thing that we want to do is just release this album.
Yeah.
The only thing we want to do is like, when can the album come out? When can we like hurry up and put that out? And, we're taking everyone else's advice who's like, oh, you got to move it later in the year. Do it after the tour. And then we're like, okay, well then, like, when's that? Is that like late in the year? They're like, probably next year. We're like, okay, cool. We'll go like late January. That gets moved to February, and then that gets moved to March. And then by the time, that's the next episode. But we are sitting on this freaking record that we're just like so amped to get out. And it just felt like fucking forever.
Yeah. And it frustrates us because, we as a band, like, and our fans know this, we want to compete with like the biggest artists in the world, and the biggest artists in the world, because of streaming, they act intuitively. When it feels like the music should come out, they usually put it out.
They just put it out.
But because of our conditioning as a band and the way we release music, we would take a year and a half sometimes to release a finished record.
Yeah.
Which is not the way we want to operate in the future, It's like really counterintuitive.
So as y'all know, I'm a Tumblr user. Saying that with the tinfoil hat on is peak loser behavior. I don't really engage in fandom that much anymore, other than my babysitter's a vampire, because, But I do occasionally lurk around in Five Sauce Tumblr and a little bit of Five Sauce Twitter, just because, at least recently, because, new album cycle, I can't get into it, oh my god. But I mainly look at Five Sauce Tumblr, and there's been some specific discussions surrounding 5 Seconds of Summer and what happened with Calm specifically, like some of the problems. I mean, we all know what the obvious problem is, but we'll get there when we get there in T-minus 5 minutes or whatever. But something a lot of people were talking about, what I heard some whispers of people saying, was that like there was probably some sort of contract that they signed that said that Five Sauce were not allowed to release the album while they were on tour with the Chainsmokers. For whatever reason, to maybe like make sure the Chainsmokers had their moment to promote their basically Five Sauce were not allowed to promote their album or like release it until after the tour. I think the original discussion was release any music at all, but I mean, we do see that they released the Live from the Vault version of Teeth while they're on tour, because that releases in October, when the tour had started in September. So they probably agreed, when they decided to go on this tour, to wait to release the album. And the tour doesn't end until December, what day? Oh god. The tour ends on December 6th, 2019. So they probably wanted to release the album as soon as possible. That's what they said, is that as soon as we were done with the tour, we wanted to release the album. And then the label kept pushing it back. They kept pushing it from January to February to then March of 2020. Yeah, the conspiracy is that the Chainsmokers basically made them agree to not release their album until after the tour. And because we know what happens in 2020, specifically March of 2020, that was a bad idea. If the album would have come out in 2019, we don't live in that world though, so we're not going to speculate on that. There's an elephant just trotting around in this room, but we will not acknowledge him for a few seconds more because we have to get over some other stuff. So on February 7th, 2020, they released the song No Shame, the music video for No Shame. Another one of their best songs, honestly. This is a great single. But also, can I just say, what are they doing releasing 3 singles before the album's out? I understand that it had been 10 months since the first lead single, Easier, so they were basically trying to remind people that they were doing an album cycle and doing album promotion by releasing more singles, but by this time, specifically the pandemic is what killed this, but by around this time, like, with streaming, you can't there's no reason to be releasing this many singles. But for some reason, for this album and their next one, 5 Sauce 5, they released 5 singles, which is wild. Like, you don't do that anymore. That's like a 2010 thing to do. You release 1 single, and then you drop the album, and you maybe release 1 more single with the album. But then you let the audience decide what the hits should be, and then you promote those songs as singles, and you ship those songs to radio. That's how streaming works these days, okay? It's kind of weird. It's not, it doesn't make any sense, but it's just kind of what we do now. If you don't have, like, the audience picking the next lead single for you, then you maybe release a 3rd single a few months after the album was released, but then you're done. Like, that's it. And I think it's just because music just doesn't make as much money as it used to, so there's not a lot of money to be made in releasing singles, unless you're a country artist or something, where they release singles to radio, like, literally 2 years after the album has come out, and I'm like, damn. But yeah, in pop music, this is a weird thing to be doing. But again, I understand why they did this, because again, it had been 10 months since the previous single. The first single, I mean, specifically. And since Teeth, it had been 6 months. So that's a long time. They basically had to put their entire album promo on pause to go on tour with the Chainsmokers. And I'm like, was it worth it? Did you get the job? Did you get the girl? The absolute arc that I've gone on. In my previous section, when I talked about Youngblood, I was trashing Taylor Swift, and now I'm listening to a Taylor Swift podcast. I've been listening to the Evolution of a Snake podcast, and I accidentally said a phrase of theirs just now. So yes, I really like No Shame. I think it's great, and one of the Target exclusive tracks that I have on my CD is the No Shame Live from the Vault. And I think it's the better version of the song. Although this time the versions are a lot more comparable, so I really appreciate the actual version of No Shame. I think it works pretty well. Can I just say, to give context, I thought all of these songs sucked ass when they first came out. I was not a big fan of Five Sauce at the time. I think the real death knell was them working with the Chainsmokers, because it was something that I was so vehemently against. Like, everything that I thought pop music should be, the Chainsmokers were actively working towards killing. And Five Sauce, previously, I had thought of being the opposite. Everything I liked about pop music, they were working towards building up again and creating within that realm. So them kind of working together, to me, at the time, felt like Five Sauce selling out. But I don't feel that way anymore. That is not my opinion in the modern day. if I knew Five Sauce like I know them now, then I would have understood what the move was. But again, they put their whole album cycle on hold to tour with them, and maybe that was a problem. But that's my personal opinion. That's me editorializing. A few more things before we get to actually talking about the album. Five Sauce performed for Firefight Australia on February 16th, 2020. There were some really bad fires that ravaged through Australia in 2019. So this performance was put on, this festival was put on to raise money to help, people rebuild. And it's apparently one of the best shows that Five Sauce have ever done. They said this is one of their favorite shows of all time. And this was basically the last show they played for years. And then we get the fourth single. What the hell? The fourth single? I know. But anyways, we get the fourth single, Old Me. The music video came out on March 10th, 2020. So I don't like this song. Still to this day. It's the only single other than Wildflower to not get a Live from the Vault track. It plays really well on the album, is what I'll say. I don't skip it when it comes on the album, which is honestly a feat, because Five Sauce, up until this point, every previous Five Sauce album has had at least one skip, and I don't think this album has a single skip. But I mean, if I was playing this album in the car with somebody who'd never heard it before, I would probably still skip. I would maybe skip Old Me. I don't know. We'll see. At the time, I really despised it because I was famously a fan from the beginning. When they were the old them or whatever, the person they were shouting out, the chorus goes, shout out to the old me. And I was like, I was a fan when that was you. It has trap hi-hats, and that was basically a write-off for me. That was me, that would give me an excuse to write off the song as pandering garbage. I like trap hi-hats in trap music, not really in pop music. I don't think it ever really worked. Again, for Five Sauce, I accept it, but I'm glad they don't do it anymore. It was only for those two albums that they really got into the whole trap music thing. And I don't know how they play it live. I mean, they never ended up playing this song live because the tour got canceled for this album, obviously. Same thing with one of my other more favorite tracks on the album, Not in the Same Way. I'm like, how would they have played that live? Would they have had the trap beat going in the background? On click track? I don't know. It's fine, though. The music video is sponsored by Truff in a very awkward way. 2020, man. Truff. Remember Truff? I know people still like it, but I feel like it feels like a very 2020 food for some reason to me. I've never tried it, actually, so I don't even know what I'm talking about. I didn't write the date down, but the album Calm, I'm pretty sure if I'm using my memory correctly, came out on March 27th, 2020. Five Sauce live in America at this point in time, and in the United States specifically, a week earlier, I'm pretty sure, in March 2020, it had officially been announced that lockdown would happen due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and that all in-person anything would be canceled, and that we were officially in a pandemic. Obviously, it had started earlier in other countries, but specifically in the United States, where they were supposed to be doing all of their promo for. Apparently also they were supposed to go to Singapore and Japan and stuff and do promo in March of 2020 there. But that got canceled, or I think a few months before, early 2020 they were supposed to do that and that got canceled. And then same thing with their London promo and then eventually the US promo as well. Pandemic killed the radio star. That was my teaser title or whatever, my rough draft title for this section. I have little titles, little working titles for each section. So for Sounds Good Feels Good, it was commercial and critical failure, because that line was bombastic in that podcast, I swear. And for this one, the working title was Pandemic Killed the Radio Star, which I still think fucking slaps. I would love to be able to use that somewhere else at some point, because it perfectly describes this era to me. So it's been a few hours. I had to recharge my camera, and I was running out of footage space. So I had some soup. I made a baked potato, which took way too long. I bought a new little air fryer, and I was excited to use it. But I should have known it was going to take an hour. It's like a little mini oven. I should have just put it in the microwave. But I had a baked potato. I had some soup. I took a nap. And I rolled out of bed, literally just rolled out of bed, and now I'm here, ready to talk about the actual album. So if I look like considerably more disheveled. That's why. I have to stop starting my recordings at like 1:30 in the morning because it's been a few hours and the sun is up. And now I have like crazy like window reflection in my glasses. So all of the light in this room is like right at eye level. So like you can't even see my eyes when I record anything. And it's been a big problem because I need my glasses to see. I can't just not wear them while recording. And then again, what am I looking at? Okay, so the album. I have the CD here. I have the CD for all of them. I feel the need to clarify anyways, though, because not really as common of a thing, right? Is this a rare collectible? Someone told me that this will go for some good money on the black market, and hell yeah. I'm glad to own something so rare and collectible. If I remember correctly, there was a mishap with this album coming out. I think something about the physical releases were delayed by a week on accident, probably because of the pandemic. I'm not sure. I didn't do research into it because I think it was something that was overemphasized at the time. I wasn't even in the fandom at that time. I was famously in my hater era, but I still remember there being a lot of discussion on like this is the reason why Five Sauce are going to fail. Like this is the reason why they're not going to get this is the first time they're not going to get a #1 debut. Or get their album to reach #1 on the Billboard 200 is because of this fumble with the sales. And that's true. That did happen. It did not debut at #1. I don't think it ever got to #1. I think it got stuck at #2. But that's still a really good release, especially for the time period of 2020. Like, that should be given more credit, I think, is what I should say. As stands, it's one of those very interesting things where we want to prop up the successes and then we want to like ignore the flops when it comes to like numbers and charting. But I think to really, free ourselves, we should just not talk about any of it at all. I only mentioned it especially in the past to kind of give context for the level of success Five Sauce were having compared to the type of music they were making, because it's night and day. It's very, very drastic. God, this chair is so squeaky. My dad gave me his old chair, and it's just fucking up the recording. I gotta switch to something else. I gotta start sitting on the bed maybe, I don't know. So I've recently been thinking more about ranking the Five Sauce discography, just because, I don't know, it's been a fun little thought experiment now that I'm starting to like get to the end of this project essentially. We're on album 4 of 5, or 4 of 6. It'll be soon. And I think I'll rank Calm pretty high. I think I have a lot of nice things to say about this album that I was not expecting to have, because I think it's a little bit of like the black sheep of the fandom, or like in the fandom to a degree. I think it's still fresh enough and new enough. I mean, it's only 5 years old. Wow. It's 5 years old already. Damn. That's still so gross. But I would say this is their most cohesive record to this date. I mean, I could probably also say the same thing for Five Sauce 5, but this thing, it gets the job done as an album. I guess it depends on, for my personal preference, it's probably a lot, different from other people's, obviously. But my personal preference when it comes to what I see as a good album is one that is very, very cohesive, where every song flows really well into the next, and it sounds like it should be there. It doesn't just sound like a collection of songs. I think that's why I roasted Self-Titled so much, even though I love so many songs from that era, and I think they have some of their best songs of their whole career are like multiple, I think, in my top 10 are from that era. So they had some really good songs. It's just that there wasn't a good sense of editorial, editing down what should and really shouldn't be there. They weren't quite sure of like what their hits were and what they should have left off the album and kept as like a deluxe track. There are so many deluxe tracks that should have been mainline tracks, and so many mainline tracks that should have been deluxe tracks. And obviously everyone's opinion is going to change on that. But when it comes to like what's going to get you the most commercial success and what is going to sonically fit together better on the album, Calm does a really, really great job of doing that. Even better than Youngblood to me personally. Youngblood is very cohesive, and it has a theme, it has an idea, and you get the idea and theme. However, some of those tracks just don't hit the mark. They don't stick the landing. Even if they do fit really well in the album, they're just not good. I don't think they're good, so I prefer to skip them. Again, not the case with this one. Even the songs that I'm not the hugest fan of, like Old Me, that's probably the only skip on the whole album for me. And again, I don't skip it when I'm listening to the album. I think the best albums out there can do that for me. They can transform the context of a song that I maybe wasn't a big fan of before, and make it work within the rest of the tracks. To bring up Taylor Swift again, because apparently that's just what I like to do these days. My favorite album of hers is 1989 for that exact reason, because I don't like songs like Bad Blood, but you know what? It works on the album to a sense where, like, I don't feel the need to skip it, and that's insane. Like, I really don't like Bad Blood. I think it's one of the worst pop songs, but that's how good the album is, that it plays really well on it. Obviously, like, night and day compared to Calm, though. So it's just like that's the only comparison point I wanted to bring up. So let's start with the opening track, probably one of the best Five Sauce songs of all time, Red Desert. You can really see the evolution in their ability to harmonize on this. They had done group harmonies before in the past. On an actual record, though, other than, like, the chorus or something, I can't really think of any. So my dumb ass completely and utterly forgot about Killer Queen. In 2019, the movie Bohemian Rhapsody came out, which was the Queen biopic, and Five Sauce were asked to do a cover of a Queen song, specifically Killer Queen. So they did that, and it's pretty good, honestly. The solos rip. They do a slightly more modern interpretation of it, which is fun. It sounds very Youngblood era, in my opinion, and that was really, like, the first time, I think, on a record they actually did that, like, full four people harmonizing moment. And they actually documented, their process in doing that, because it was, like a pretty cool thing that they did. And clearly, in my opinion, doing this kind of inspired them to maybe do that further on the record. And in my opinion, that's kind of where we get a little bit of Red Desert. Obviously, like, Red Desert could have been recorded before instead of after. And so, like, just at the same time they were making Red Desert, they were also doing the Killer Queen cover. So that's really fun. A really fun little piece of tidbit there. I just really like it when all four of them harmonize, and they continue to do so throughout their career, so it's awesome. Here's a deep cut for y'all to prove my Five Sauce standum. Do y'all know the song Over and Over? I can't remember if I mentioned that when I talked about, like, their first EP, but that's one of my favorite unreleased tracks of theirs. That one, that's good. They gotta get back in the studio and re-record that one, because I still, sometimes, like, I'm in the library, and I'll just be, like, doing work in silence, and then I'll go, you know something I don't. I'd like you to be told. Every place over and over. Like, it gets stuck in my head. That's a catchy hook. And to write that at 15, damn, couldn't be me. That is like an early example of them, all four of them doing vocals. Because usually when they're all singing at the same time, it's the chorus. And so because of that, Ashton isn't singing, because, he's drumming. But on Red Desert, in the opening, we have these beautiful, beautiful harmonic vocals. And I really don't know much about the context of, like, singing and vocals and all that stuff. Obviously, I don't know much about, like, music production either. I'm just a person yapping on a screen. But something I have always, like, thought and believed is that, like, the closer you grow with somebody, like, in an emotional bond, the more, like, good your vocals sound together. They kind of, like, blend better. I don't know if that's just, like, some hocus pocus, like pseudoscience stuff. But, like, when I think of some of my favorite vocal harmony groups, I think of, like, the Judds. That's a mother and daughter duo. Like, that's some of the best, like, vocal mixing you could probably get, honestly. Like, damn. And you could tell that they just, like, their voices work so well together. They all hit notes really, really well. And they always had, but it's, like, it's at a different level now. And this song really has a rollicking drum bass kind of combo, and it really crescendos and builds to this huge release, which sounds really, really good. We don't really get anything like that on the rest of the album, and there's a world where this album sounds like Red Desert, where every song sounds like that, and that's great. But I can understand, I feel like I can tell to a certain degree certain songs that were written more closer to like the Youngblood era that have a little bit more of that Youngblood twinge. I think of songs like Not in the Same Way, maybe even Old Me, Best Years, Wildflower. Like, because these albums were written so close to one another, yet they have the same distance as Sounds Good, Feels Good and Youngblood does, which is interesting. Again, record label fumble there. I can see why they're no longer signed to Interscope Records. I would like to assume that later on in the process, some of the more darker songs and some of the more like somewhat heavier songs, if we're to take the From the Vault track theory that I had seriously, those were maybe written later. Although, obviously, I don't know who these people are. I've said it before. Red Desert really transitions into No Shame really well. I tolerate Old Me. Maybe I'll respond to some emails while that song's playing, and then I'll lock back in once we get into Easier. And then Easier, just like it flows perfectly into Teeth. Like this is some great album sequencing here. One could argue that on Sounds Good, Feels Good, there was maybe some trickiness when it comes to the song sequencing, but we don't have that problem on Youngblood, and we don't have that problem on here. Yay, I love seeing artist improvement. And this is the record where we really get some sad shit, and that's where I evilishly grin and get very, very excited to dive deeper into the lyrical content of. So before we get into the deep cuts, let's talk about the lyrical content of some of the singles some more. My case is broken, by the way. This is really sad. I think I broke it the day that I recorded my previous, my original Calm video. Like, I had pulled it out of my shelf to listen to it, and I dropped it on the floor, and it hit the corner, and the corner just snapped. So now it's separate. I need to buy new jewel cases for these, man. I swear I take good care of them. It's just that, like, they get a lot of use, okay? Luckily, this album actually has all of the lyrics, although it's in a very cumbersome kind of way. It folds out to one big poster, which I would love to put on my wall, but I like to keep this in mint condition, and I feel like I would rip it up if I tried to put it on my wall. But this is a great photo. I really like this photo. I really like the color scheme, the visuals they're going for here. Maybe I'll get into their outfits a little bit later on. I don't know. Yeah, I'd love this on my wall, but I don't want to ruin... I wish they would have put like an insert or something for me to put on my wall and then like kept the actual booklet, intact. We have the poster on one side, and then on the other side we have all the lyrics. So it's just gonna look like I'm reading the morning paper when I read these lyrics out. Okay, let's see. At least I don't have to pull up AZ lyrics again like I had to do for Youngblood. I don't like doing that shit. I want the lyrics in my hand, okay? So, No Shame is kind of the first time we see them doing commentary on the music industry or just fame in general. The first line of the song is, "Angel with a gun in your hand, pointing my direction, giving me affection. Love is fatal, won't you give it a chance? Center of attention, don't ask me any questions." This is a Five Sauce-ism that I've talked about in the past, where it could be about a girl in a love song, but it also could be about something a little bit more darker or obscured. This is a common for many, many pop songs as well. This isn't just a Five Sauce thing, I'm just saying it's something that Five Sauce themselves do a lot. I feel like there's some lyrics that provide some really great visuals to that one line, "Love is fatal," right? When it comes to fame being a sense of like feeling love from, the greater world or your fans or whatever. I mean, describing like being famous as an angel pointing a gun in your face is like, it's good. I think it really portrays that sort of like duality of the good with the bad. And even though it's extremely risky and definitely, could be fatal, it is something that is worth the risk. Like, once you give love a chance, like, isn't that what we've all been taught we have to chase our whole lives? And then, of course, the chorus is the most obvious, with "I only light up when cameras are flashing, never enough and no satisfaction, got no shame, I love the way you're screaming my name. Digging my grave to get a reaction, changing my face and calling it fashion, got no shame, I love the way you're screaming my name." So that is more obviously about, fame and success and popular culture, being in the popular culture. This was probably something that they were thinking a lot about now that they had basically finally reached it with Youngblood. They had done so, of course, as well with their earlier songs and earlier stuff, but with the end of Sounds Good, Feels Good, the whole reason why I marketed that video the way I did is because, according to everyone behind the scenes at the time in their circle, they had failed. They had sophomore slumped and had lost their 15 minutes were up, essentially. They lost all of the goodwill that they had built up. And so Youngblood was them trying to redo that, trying to build that back up again, and it was successful. So they were probably thinking a lot about the fleetingness of fame and also the fact that they're shitty boyfriends. Let's get into that more too. Easier has a lot of pooth-isms, as I call it, where it's kind of describing like a messy sort of on again, off again, hot and cold relationship. The main tag, is it easier to stay or is it easier to go? I don't want to know, but I know that I'm never ever going to change, and you know you don't want it any other way. I think of other songs of his like Attention that kind of have this darker tinge to a more dangerous romance, right? I mean, my favorite song of his, Done For Me, I think also has this. But see, what's so beautiful about that song is that it has the twist, it has the twinge of having like the female perspective, which you don't get on songs like Attention, and that's why I like that song more, and even more than Easier. Yeah, but anyways, it's one of those classic, like, hot and cold situations, you know? Why do we always gotta run away and we wind up in the same place? It's like we're looking for the same thing. Do we really gotta do this now, right here with all your friends around? In the morning, we can work it out. So it's kind of talking about getting in a fight with somebody. Oh, that's horrible. When you're at, like, a friend kind of, like, hangout and the couple starts fighting and you guys are like, ugh, I hate that. But then by the next morning, they've made up, one could say. Although one thing I will say that does make this song work within the context of their career and this album is that intense sense of codependency. In the second verse, we see the lines, every time you say you're gonna leave, that's when you get the very best of me. You know we need it like the air we breathe. And then the sort of like pre-chorus is, I love you so much that I hate you. Right now, it's so hard to blame you because you're so damn beautiful. So damn beautiful. Ah, the classic pop song trope of, we really shouldn't be together, but damn, we're so hot and we look so good together. We might as well just keep this going, you know? But yeah, that line of, you know, we need it like the air we breathe, and whenever you actually say you're gonna leave, that's when you really, you know, start to spook me out. Yeah, sure, we say mean things about each other, but when you said you're gonna leave me, I can't have that. This air of codependency will crop back up again in the future. Don't you worry. We do get some love songs, though, with songs like Wildflower. I really like Wildflower. This is one of the only songs that is a full Callum song, which I really appreciate. It works really well. I'm pretty sure I don't mention it in the video. If I do, then I'll not include this in. But Wildflower was actually the fifth and final single from this album, and it did come out after the album came out. So it was one of the first, as far as I remember, music videos to be filmed remotely in the pandemic. So they all film it from their homes in front of a green screen, and it's a pretty good video. I quite like the song as a single. I kind of wish it would have been a single earlier, so it would have gotten, you know, the flowers it deserves. Haha, Wildflower, get it? Yeah. Let's circle back around to Old Me and Teef, okay? So here's the thing about Old Me that I don't like. Okay, first of all, the production is kind of dated to me nowadays with the trap percussion and the vocal processing. I don't like to talk about that too much because everyone's obviously a really great singer in this band. But I found specifically for this album, some of the vocal processing they were doing for Luke, I wasn't that big of a fan of. And I think some of the higher notes sound a bit funky. They sound a bit funky to me. Every song is going to have like vocal processing on them, no matter how good the singer is. They are going to do some, you know, audio manipulation. That's just what the modern day music landscape is like, to compare it to such like, you know, almost perfect like computer, you know, tuning and such. But that very obvious and jarring like jump up from a low note to a high note that the average human voice can't do, but you can kind of like manipulate it to sound that way on a computer, it's just not for me. Some people really like that sound. That's why it was again a popular kind of sound for the 2010s of a way to process vocals. I think of artists like Camila Cabello doing that a lot, but it's not for me. So I don't judge anyone who likes the sound of Old Me and likes Old Me. I've actually grown on it a little bit. I still can't say I like it and that it's a good song for me personally, but specifically at the place I go to eat lunch a lot, they have this like Good Vibes Spotify playlist, and Old Me is on there, and I've heard Old Me multiple times while eating my sandwich. So in that sense, it's like, I think it's kind of grown on me because I've kind of just like, I've recognized just how normal of a pop song it sounds like. But I think what really kind of distances me from the song is the lyrical material. The best way I can attempt to try and describe it is kind of like when you're told to open up about an experience that you've had, but you're not like ready to talk about it yet. You clearly haven't like, you know, come out of the other side quite yet. So you're kind of like obfuscating from the truth in a sense without even realizing it. Like, you kind of know that like I'm not really being honest here, but like this is the kind of state I'm in. I might cut this out because I cut it out previously because I was trying to reduce the length of my 5 Sauce videos back in the day, but I don't know if I care as much now. I went on a whole thing comparing the album release cycle of Self-Titled to Planet Her by Doja Cat, which in retrospect was a great rant and I wish I would have left it in. But I thought no one would give a shit. And now I don't care. You're gonna listen to me no matter what. I doth yap, okay? I think a lot of like Eternal Sunshine by Ariana Grande, that's one of my lesser albums from her personally, just because she talks about a lot of like, you know, really important and serious things on that album, and I'm glad that she does. However, it doesn't really seem like she was ready to talk about some of these things, in my opinion. I feel like there was more to look into there that we didn't see because she was still very much in the middle of it and in the enthralls of it. And maybe the record label just said, hey, it's been 4 years since you released an album. You gotta release something. And this was the music that came up. Like, I would have appreciated if maybe some of these songs made it onto a later album, but she waited a little bit and let sort of like the emotions mature in her more. And we got something that was a little bit more closer to what maybe, you know, would be a more honest truth. And for old me specifically, that's kind of how I feel. And I can only say that because I now have 5 Sauce 5, which is, I think, is a pure example. I mean, I think of these lines like, no one could control me, left my lovers lonely, had to fuck it up before I really got to know me. It's one of those things that's like, do you know yourself? Have you reached self-actualization yet? Have you really? I would say the answer is no. And I'm talking about the artist 5 Seconds of Summer. Obviously, since there's 4 of them, all of their songs are going to be composite sketches of like what an actual truth is. And I am in no way interested in the actual real life, tangible truth of the real life people that are in this band. I am talking about the artist 5 Seconds of Summer's truth and the sort of like story trajectory that they have went on in their music. It would be a disservice to say that their music isn't somewhat autobiographical, but I do not want to say, well, because they said it in a song, that means it's real, that it happened in real life. Like, that we get into a lot of trouble when we do stuff like that, okay? I hope it's obvious that I also think that this is the case for Ariana Grande as well. All of this, when I say she didn't realize this or she hadn't done this, it's like I'm talking about the artist and not the real life person, because obviously we don't know the real life person. I'm an Ari-nator at the end of the day. Please don't come for me, stans. I love her. She's one of my favorite pop artists. Just wanted to clarify that. This song specifically just doesn't feel like it was ready to actually tackle the real problems at hand, the real dark stuff. Okay, there was some real dark stuff happening that they were starting to dip their toes into when we get to some of the later deep cuts. So let's get into them now. So there's a sort of like 3-track run through that is just a wall of depression. So let's start with probably one of my favorite tracks off of this album that has really, really grown on me in recent years. Lonely Heart. I, for some reason, misspoke. I had no sleep. I'm sorry. God, I love this song. It's so good. The chorus doesn't really quite snap the way it maybe could, but the verses, man, they're so tasty. This is such a good song. Even though I did put down the chorus a little, but it's still a really good chorus, okay? So I didn't really mention it, I don't think at least, on the previous review. Listen, it's literally been a year since the previous review. I don't know why I thought I could review every 5 Sauce album and watch 120 movies. I don't know, I was on crack or something. 5 Sauce have always had sexual material in their songs, but this is when we really start to get to songs being sexy, if that makes sense. When I think of sexual content in their earlier songs, I think of songs like English Love Affair, one of their best songs. It really is. Even like Mrs. All American, it has that I'll ring your bell line, which, you know, that was kind of a lot for that era. And then on Youngblood, we definitely get the first instances of them trying to do sexy songs, but I would argue it's not until Calm that we actually get that. I said earlier, Valentine is a lot more of like a hocus pocus spooky Halloween song than it actually is sexy to me. The live version is a different story though. That instrumentation, that arrangement of that song, so good. And very sexy. But to me, Lonely Heart is where we first get into that, and it actually works, okay? It's the subtle guitar, the very, very subtle acoustic guitar with the light, very, very light sound effects in the background, and just the way that Luke is singing it, it's very, very sultry. We basically have like the acceptance, the refusal to accept what needs to be accepted, which is that this relationship is done, bucko. The pre-chorus goes, "Our house on fire, we're burning, we dance inside, you're hurting. If you leave me in the morning, I'll have such a lonely heart." It's like, bitch, maybe this isn't about you. That second verse, though, hits me every time. Listen, I very rarely cry to Five Sauce music, but I get close with this one. "Your precious heart, can't watch it break, so I'll close my eyes while you walk away. Can I have a second chance? Can I have another dance? Can I start another life with you? When I wake up in a haze and I haven't slept in days and you're 1,000 miles away with such a lonely heart." There's something so satisfying about just truly being so goddamn depressing to me. Maybe I'm a freak, maybe I'm a sicko, and that's okay. I'm willing to accept that. And then the sort of like repeating part in the chorus, "If you can't find a reason to stay, then I know I'm gonna always have a lonely, 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 lonely heart." It's really that feeling of like, oh, this is my only love, this is the one, I'll never find love again. I then did the intro to talking about the song Lover of Mine, but there were some crazy sirens going on in the background, and I thought the microphone wouldn't pick up on them, but they definitely did. So here I'm just gonna do it now. Lover of Mine is a really good song, and I really, really like it, especially the lyrics. And I don't like it as much as Lonely Heart, and also I get the names swapped sometimes because they both start with L and kind of, represent the same thing. Lonely Heart, Lover of Mine, similar enough to where my brain confuses them. But I really do appreciate the lyrical material of this song, and I think it plays really well on the album. The first verse, I think, is what really gets me, honestly. "Lover of mine, maybe we'll take some time. Kaleidoscope mind gets in the way. Hope and I pray, darling, that you will stay. Butterfly lies, chase them away." Again, all of these songs basically describe tumultuous relationships that are in a state of like utter collapse and destruction, yet there's a sort of calmness in said, dismantling. Just specifically that line, "Kaleidoscope mind gets in the way." Damn. Butterfly lies, chase them away. This is some of the best lyrical material we've gotten so far. As much as I love songs from Self-Titled and from Sounds Good Feels Good, we're not getting poetry on the level that we're getting it here, okay? And it's the rhythm, the instrumentation of it. It flows just perfectly. There's definitely almost like a Swedish mentality to the way that these lyrics sound. I can't remember if they worked with Swedish songwriters on this album specifically. I know that they did for Youngblood, but they definitely learned a lot from those Swedish songwriters because there's a sort of like methodical like math almost to the way the vowels sound with the music in the background that creates a very satisfying experience for the brain. And I could get very, like poetry explaining, the pentameter and all that stuff. But I'm not going to, because I don't like doing that with poetry in the first place. I just feel like if it sounds good, it sounds good, okay? And it feels good. But you really can get into the math of these lyrics if you really want to, if that's something that you're interested in doing. I'm not. I know I'm an English major, so I really should. I should really flex the knowledge I have. But no, I've had like 2 hours of sleep in the past 24 hours, so maybe another day. But you can see how these vowels just like flow and sort of melt perfectly into each other. Maybe we'll take some time, kaleidoscope mind. You see how each end syllable like perfectly rhymes with each other, and the structure is just, it's immaculate, honestly. Same thing with the pre-chorus. Dance around the living room, lose me in the sight of you. I've seen the red, I've seen the blue. Take all of me. Deep to where your secrets hide, where we've been 1,000 times. Swallow every single line. Take all of me. Again, another example of this relationship is done. It has to be done at this point. There's no use hanging on to it anymore. But there is nothing else that they know, and we can't let it go yet. It's almost like sunk cost fallacy. When I take a look at my life and all of my crimes, you're the only thing that I think I got right, and I'd never give you away because I've already made that mistake. Now, what mistake are you talking about? Okay, this is where we really start to get into some concepts of material relating to possible infidelity, okay? I think I'm going to hold off on that conversation till the next album, because that is when it really starts to come to life. But if you're talking about losing somebody and saying that you don't want to lose them again because you've already made that mistake, I mean, sure, it could just be you previously breaking up and then getting back together, but also could mean that you were unfaithful. And then with the next song of Thin White Lies, we get the classic pop song tradition of cocaine allegories. Am I allowed to say that word on YouTube? Am I going to get in trouble? I mean, the title Thin White Lies kind of says it all. It's kind of a little bit closer to like Thin White Lines, right? It's like very The Weeknd, who was very, very influential on the sound of pop music at this time, and still is. I'll give him credit. To where it's like it could be about a girl, but it's probably about that white snow, you know? I specifically want to call out the bridge because I have a personal story that I'm a bit ashamed to admit, but I feel the need to do so anyways. So every time Five Sauce released an album, I have always sat down on my floor at midnight. Since Sounds Good Feels Good, I have sat down on my floor at midnight with my headphones on and a notepad or my phone notes app in hand, and I have just wrote my initial thoughts on each song as I was listening to them. And for Calm, I was quite negative. I was also quite negative for Youngblood. And even Five Sauce 5, I did not have nice things to say. I had very, middling things to say. But specifically when we came to Thin White Lies, I really did not like the production at the time. There was, this, tinny, sort of, metallic sound in the background that really annoyed me. I was like, did they drop a fork in the studio or something and then just left it in? I think that was, my little witty one-liner that I wrote at the time. And then I wrote something else that specifically has stuck with me for my whole life. So in the bridge, we get the line, I don't think I like me anymore. Can someone tell me who I was before? I don't really like me anymore. Which is just the most depressing thing to say of all time. That's the come down from the high, from the rush of the high, right? And in my notes, I wrote something along the lines of, I don't think I like you anymore either, Luke. And it's not funny, it's really mean. But I think this was where the disparity I was really starting to feel with this album and why it wasn't clicking for me on a first initial listen back in 2020. We say shout out to the old me and everything you showed me, but it's you're doing bad. So all the stuff that the old you must have taught you must have been bad advice. You're either that or you're not following any good advice that the old you has taught you or showed you or whatever. There's something not there with the lyrics. And now I think the sound and the production and the scope, it all works. It fundamentally is describing a transitional period in someone's life who, are in their mid-20s and are clearly having some, emotional, turbulent feelings and emotions. It's a very good pandemic album, if I'm being honest, specifically because it really sort of reflects that sort of reflection. It reflects reflection. There's a reason why I'm not a poet, y'all, and Five Sauce are. It really highlights the moment of reflection that a lot of people had during that time period, because there were a lot of people, especially musicians, who had nothing to do but just sit in their house all day and think about their lives, right? It's funny because the next album is actually the pandemic album that was written, during the pandemic. And this one was written before. But I think the moodiness and the darkness really sort of played to the sentiment of the time, accidentally. So when I think of albums that define 2020, this one's way up there. And I would not say that for their first two albums. Those albums did not define the sound of the 2010s. Youngblood does, and Calm Now does as well. Which is why it makes sense that these two albums are their most commercially successful with some of their biggest long-lasting hits so far. I would say ever, but never say never, as Justin Bieber says. And then the final song, High, kind of is we've reached acceptance, but a sort of bitter acceptance. Okay, the relationship is over, and this person has left. And they're gone. But the sentiment is, I hope you think of me high. I hope you think of me highly when you're with someone else. Now that's a really great little double switch, a little entendre going on here. They go on to do this later. This was clearly something that they were kind of cooking on at the time, is doing this sort of bait and switch, lyrical motif. I hope you think of me high, as in I hope you get high and think of me, you know, which is very messy and horrible thing to say. And then I hope you think of me highly. So I hope you have good memories of our relationships. But also, I hope when you're too drunk at the club, when you've popped one too many mollies, I'm on your mind and you spiral thinking about me. You have a bad trip thinking about me. It's very petty and vengeful while also being a little bit nice, if you can even describe it that way. And I think the kind of sour grapes attitude of the song works. It's just a pure acoustic ballad with a little bit of spice in the background. I don't think there's any drums on it. Yeah, no, it's a very bitter and angry track, but there's a sense of acceptance in that I think makes it at least interesting, even if I never go out of my way to listen to this song. It's only ever on the album that I listen to it. Versus other songs like Thin White Lies, Lover of Mine, even Not in the Same Way, which I didn't really mention the lyrical material of just because it's not the best. But hey, when a banger is a banger, it bangs. I've said it once and I'll say it again. Those songs I do like to repeatedly revisit outside of the album, as well as the singles that have Live from the Vault track versions. If those versions were on the album, that would have been so good. Because, like, Red Desert leading into No Shame Live from the Vault, perfect. We can, in this world, if I'm creating my own version of Calm, Old Me is not in here. Maybe she's a deluxe track that's tacked onto the end with, like, Kill My Time or something. That was a deluxe track, I think, by the way. I don't have it on my version, but it does exist. And then Easier in Teeth Live from the Vault leading into Wildflower, it's perfect. I feel like that would make this album even better. It would elevate it even more. Okay, I don't know how to fold this back up. This happens to me every time. I get confused on how this works. So I actually think that's all I have to say about Calm. I mean, I say that's all I have to say, but I've been recording for hours, so, I would maybe go into a little bit more of the promotional stuff that they were doing at the time, the tour, but that all got canceled. The No Shame tour, I think, was announced after their Firefight Australia performance. And it was supposed to run for basically the entire year of 2020, but of course that got canceled. It didn't get canceled, it got rescheduled. Rescheduled so much that it got rebranded as the Take My Hand tour, which was sort of like the mini tour that they were on during the release of their next album. So we'll talk about that when we talk about the next album. There was a lot of Zoom meeting interviews, a lot of really fun moments. I will say, it is really endearing to see them in these Zoom interviews. They're very funny. They have a great rapport. They clearly all like each other, And they specifically said in their podcast 10-year anniversary special, which is a year after this album comes out, right? This album comes out in March of 2020. By December 2021 is when they're doing a little 10-year anniversary special, which is going to have its own segments, don't worry. Since that podcast goes from 2011 to 2021, we won't have that as an anchoring sort of like opinion piece to like drive the rest of the reviews. So that'll be interesting going forward. When they described the year 2020 in that video, which they didn't describe for long, they went on like a full hour rant just talking about 2 years, and then for the rest of the years they talked about like for 15 minutes each, so it's its own thing. That's why I haven't been referencing them as much in these later reviews, because they said less during it. For 2020 they described how obviously we don't live in the universe where the No Shame tour happened, but if it did, they probably wouldn't have had the time to reflect and analyze their behavior and truly who they had become as people if it wasn't for the fact that the pandemic had happened. And if they hadn't done that serious, deep reflection, we wouldn't have got the material that we got on their fifth album, 5 Sauce 5.
We've been kind of pursuing all the best parts of us and working on them. It's like as if 5 Seconds of Summer were a person, and it's like some self-work's been happening.
I think for me the biggest thing that I've noticed change within the band is that I feel like we're finally not running away from the past. You know what I mean? Like we're finally not shying away from, the people that we were and the band that we were. And, I think we've realized that like evolving and changing over the years, and as long as you've been a group, or I mean, whatever you're doing, not even related to music, but like it doesn't always look the same. and that journey has always got to be different, and it's got to have highs, lows, and it's got to have different like evolutions, and you have to do things wrong to get things right. And I think that for us, I think we've finally been able to like acknowledge the past in our own way, and we needed the time to be able to like reflect on that.
This album would not sound the way it does or feel the way it does without that time at home. We were lucky enough to be at home and just sort of like make music or hang out or whatever. But it wouldn't, if we had gone on the No Shame tour, would have been rad, would have been that reality is really cool too, but it wouldn't have, I don't think our headspaces would have been collectively as good as they are now, and the music would not sound the way it does.
That's what I think. I think we needed space to reflect and to like be ourselves in a situation that isn't to do with us. You know what I mean? As far as when it comes to like being a band, we spent most of 2020 basically not being a band, and I think that when we were able to like bring it all back in for this one, I think it's stronger than ever.
So part of me is really kind of glad. It's like inevitable. Oh god, I sound like that. I sound like Vanessa Hudgens. I sound like the Hudge. So part of me, not to sound like the Hudge for a second, is a little bit glad that, everything worked out fine enough. Obviously, I wish the pandemic didn't happen. Since we live in the timeline that we do, we have to accept and hold with grace the dark periods in our lives and understand them as necessary to character growth and development. And that is very, very much true for the band Five Sauce. Because this era felt like there was a lot of, even more so in Youngblood, but not as much here because we got a little bit more of a peek behind the curtain, a little bit more honesty. But for all of these albums up until this point, we had got a lot of obfuscation, I think, a lot of discussion of depressing thoughts and feelings, but never what the root of said depressing thoughts and feelings were, which we get on this album, which is drug abuse, messy relationships that include things like not being faithful and cheating, and extremely, extremely low self-confidence. These are all things that, like, maybe if you really, like, root through the trash of albums like, Sounds Good, Feels Good, and Youngblood, you can find evidence of. But for the most part, those albums are really sort of trying to put up a front of like cool guy, cool person, attitude. And this is really where we start to get some more deep and honest thoughts. And it's looking a bit scary. I'm not gonna lie. It's looking spooky. I cheer and I clap. I say let's do more of it. So yes, I think that's all I have to say about this album and this era. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe. I don't say that enough in my videos. Every time I'm at the end of editing a video, I'm like, why didn't I say like and subscribe? I'm supposed to be doing that. I talk about music, Five Sauce on this channel, but I also talk a lot about TV shows. I'm kind of really into my 2010s bag right now. I've been loving talking about 2010s culture. I don't know why. I think it's just because we really start to get like a window into what our modern landscape is like by just looking slightly into the past, but not like really far, At least right now. Maybe one day I'll start talking about some real ancient shit, but yeah, right now I've been really liking talking about stuff that has just barely ended. Eras that we're just barely behind on. But we're catching up to the present day very, very fast with this series. Well, not really, because it took me a fucking year. But it feels like we're catching up to the present very fast now. So yes, tune in for Five Sauce 5 for the Five Sauce show, actually, which is what we're going to talk about next. And yeah, thanks for watching. I will see you guys next time. Bye.